Hey, what's up everybody? This is Derek with Reef Automation, and this is a video I've been wanting to do for quite a while. It's been about roughly about a year since I got my first Hydros, so I thought it'd be about time to tell you how I felt about it and compare it to my Apex. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so I've come up with 15 different things to compare both the Hydros and the Apex on. And I'm going to score them 1 out of 5 like I did on the GHL and Apex series for a total of 75 points. And I will show you at the end of the video what the overall score of both of them were. So we're going to first start with availability. And what I mean by availability is if you want to go online and you wanted to buy one of these products, how easy it is to get them. So let's start with the Hydros. The Hydros I give at this time about a 5 out of 5. And the reason I give it a 5 out of 5 is the Hydros is readily available just about anywhere you go online. You can get most of their controllers, most of their bundles pretty easily. I found that a good amount of their product is also available on their website, so if you wanted to order just specific parts, you could just go to Coralvue's website and you can order pretty much any part. So that's why I give it a 5. I'm going to give the Apex a 4. And the reason I give the Apex a 4 is the Apex is relatively available. You can get most of the parts. However, there are a few shortages here and there. It's been difficult to get tridents, for instance, in the past. It's been difficult to get probes in the past. With COVID and with a number of other issues getting supply and parts for most manufacturers, it's understandable. But generally, the Hydros seems to be a little bit more available than the Apex and Neptune product. Okay, so the next one's going to be product selection. Now, the Hydros has been out for roughly a year. The first one started coming out in October of last year. And since then, they have developed a number of new products. Obviously, Neptune has been around a lot longer than Hydros, but at the current state, product selection is very different in both of the product lines, and I can probably see Coralvue coming out with a lot more products. But at this time of the video, we're going to rate it on product selection after about a year of the Hydros being out. With that being said, I'm going to give the Hydros a 3 out of 5. They have a number of products coming out. They have a lot of different things that are very unique to the Hydros that the Neptune Apex doesn't have. However, at this point in time, most of their products are very similar. They have a number of controllers that just have different ports on them for a little bit less, and the more of those devices you have, they come into something called a collective, and therefore you can have a larger system with more devices. However, there isn't a lot of devices that they make at this time. They make optical sensors very similar to Neptune. They make ATO very similar, and a number of other smaller products. Leak sensors, for instance. They do have a rope leak sensor, which I find to be pretty cool in comparison to that of Neptune, which makes these smaller block type leak sensors. But I'm going to give them a 3 out of 5. Their product selection isn't superb at this time, but like I said, as time goes on, I think that score is going to get a little higher. So Neptune, on the other hand, I'm going to give them a 5 out of 5 in this category. And the reason I'm going to give them a 5 out of 5 is they keep on coming out with newer products. Now, again, if we're just talking about Hydros and what they have to offer, Neptune has a significant amount more. Again, they have been around a lot longer, so that's understandable. But at this point of the video, I'm going to give them a 5 out of 5. They have a trident to test your water parameters. They have a new light. They have a refugium light. They have a number of different modules and different sensors, different flow sensors, different leak sensors. They have just a number of different products. They have a wave maker. They have a pump. So in terms of product selection, I have to give the Neptune a 5 out of 5 because they do have just about any product you could ever request for a controller to have. Okay, so our next one is going to be third-party integration and support. Now, what I mean by this is if you buy a Hydros or you buy a Neptune Apex, how many products can you actually connect to it and have support for it? This was tough because both of them have similar but different abilities to control other products. I'm going to say that the Hydros has a little bit more in terms of other products it can support and will support in the future. And I'm hopeful that Apex will continue to provide more support for other products, but at this time it is lacking in my opinion. So in this case, I'm going to give Hydros a 5 out of 5. At this present time, they are integrating with a number of different products and will continue to. They have the ability to support Mastertronic and Alcatronic configurations into their system. They also have the ability to input anything that's 0 to 10 volt analog, which is huge. That's something that Neptune is missing. They do have the ability to control third-party products that also they support. So I'm going to give them a 5 out of 5, whereas with the Apex, I'm going to give them, or Neptune, I'm going to give them a 3 out of 5. They don't really support a lot of external products, with the exception of their IOTA support, which currently doesn't do a lot. It does CJ pumps and it does Kessel lighting, also AI lighting as well. But overall, that's about it. They do have, of course, 0 to 10 volt support, which of course Hydros has as well. But I hope in the future they do continue to add more and more third-party support. So at this time, I'm going to give the points to Hydros 5 and the Apex 3. Okay, so our next subject is basic setup. And what I mean by that is when you get the product, how easy it is to set up and get going. In this particular category, I'm going to give both the Apex and the Hydros a 5 out of 5. I believe that both of them are extremely easy to set up and extremely easy to get started. You open up the app, you hit add to system, you put in some credentials, and you're done. There's really not much to it on both sides of the coin. My next category is going to be advanced programming. And what I mean by this is when you get the product, how hard or how easy it is to get more advanced programming put in. And for this, I'm going to give the Hydros a 3 out of 5. They don't have a lot of advanced programming. There's a lot of if, ands, and ors that you can combine a little bit here and there with their advanced programming. It's not something that I would say is simple or easy in any regards. It is a little complex if you really want to get into some real complex things. But overall, it's not extremely difficult, and that's why I give it a 3 out of 5 instead of a lower score. The Neptune Apex, however, I'm going to give that a 5 out of 5. As a programmer, I find that their advanced programming abilities are superior and therefore better than the Hydros. There's a lot more you can do with the Apex. I do find it to be difficult, very similar to that of the Hydros. However, I find that the advanced programming on the Apex is more superior and you can do a lot more with it. So that's why I give them a 5 out of 5 in this category. So in the next one, I took a look at how difficult or how easy it is to actually install the product. And I found that the Hydros is exceptionally easier to install than that of the Neptune. And what I mean by that is it's pretty much just plug it in and call it a day. I didn't really find it to be that difficult in comparison to that of the Apex. Seeing as the Hydros does have wireless capabilities that the Apex does not, and we'll go over that here in the next couple reviews, I think that the Hydros itself is pretty much plug and play, and that's why I give it a 5 out of 5. It's all color coded. There's really not much you can screw up on this. Each one of the connectors are screw terminals, which is nice. They won't come loose, and they have special little prongs inside, or connectors or conductors, that you can't put the wrong one in the wrong hole, basically. And I find it to be a lot easier than that of the Apex. Now, the Apex is and can be very simple as well. It's simply an Aquabus structure where you just plug in essentially an Aquabus cable, which looks like a USB cable, and you daisy chain all the products together. Where it becomes more difficult at that point is then there's a number of connectors, such as their FMM, which is the fluid monitoring system, which allows you to plug in optical sensors, flow sensors, a number of different things. However, there's no way to know what you're plugging in by the cord. There's no, this is an optical sensor, for instance, or this is colored, or this is orange for something. So it can get very complex if you have a lot of devices like I do. Therefore, it's very important that you label everything. With the Hydros, you really don't have to label anything. So for that, I'm going to give the Neptune a 4 out of 5. I don't think it deserves any lower score because it is pretty simple as long as you're labeling everything, but I do of course feel that the Hydros is significantly easier to install. Okay, so the next one is going to be going over the app. Now, Hydros has an app of their own, and so does Neptune. Neptune calls it Fusion, and Hydros calls it the Hydros app, or I believe it's called the Hydros app. Anyway, the apps are different in a lot of different ways, and you can do pretty much everything with both of the apps just from your phone. So we'll get started with the Hydros. I do like the app, but I don't love the app. I found it to be okay. And the reason I find it to be okay is it does have nice big bold letters. It does have nice big bold boxes to make it very simple to see and very intuitive. However, for people that have larger systems like myself, I found it to be a little bit cumbersome in using the system because you have to get into the inputs and you have to get into the outputs. It's not just a display of all your stuff, kind of similar to that of the Apex. You have different folders basically on the Hydros, which I personally didn't like the folders. And what I mean by folders is you have to click on one thing and then see another thing and then scroll to another thing, whereas with the Apex it's just all right in front of you. In terms of using the app to program, I did find it to be a little bit easier on the Hydros side. Something else that I did notice, however, is that if you have a phone that zooms in, a lot of characters are cut off on the Hydros, and some buttons even I've seen are cut off on the Hydros. I don't know exactly what that is, but on the Neptune side, it basically converts or it zooms or magnifies depending on the size of your phone and the resolution, which I think is really good. So for this, I'm going to give the Hydros a 3 out of 5 for their app. I think it can be improved, and I think in the future they might improve it. For the Apex, however, I believe that it's going to get a 5 out of 5. I like the structure of the app. I do think they need to make a couple changes for larger systems, like the ability to have possible tabs. With their new UI that they've just released, I really think it's above and beyond what they've done before. So for this, I'm going to give the Neptune a 5 and the Hydros a 3. Now, kind of going into the same thing, we're going to talk about the speed of the app or the speed of the system. How quick does it actually react to your button presses? And with this, it was really hard because both of the systems are quite quick. I think even when you go into Bluetooth on the Hydros, it's a lot quicker than you would think with Bluetooth. When you're on the IP side of the Hydros, however, there is a little bit of a lag. It's not too bad, but when using the wireless outlets that the Hydros has compared to the hardwired outlets that Neptune has, there is a little bit of a lag. I found that the lag isn't that big of a deal. So for that, I'm actually going to give this a tie to both of the systems. A 4 out of 5 and a 4 out of 5. Because with the Hydros, like I said, there is that lag, so I'm not going to give it a 5 out of 5. And with the Apex, it's fast, but when you're programming things, there's times where there can be a little bit of slow selection, and sometimes it gets locked up. There's been times where I've clicked on graphs and it takes a while to load. So I think a 4 out of 5 is a good score for speed of both of the products. Okay, so the next one's going to be displays, and this is going to be an interesting one. The Hydros does not have a display, whereas the Neptune does provide you with a display. The display will do alarms on the Apex, whereas with the Hydros, there is no display, but it does have colors that flash on the device itself. The reason that there is no display for the Hydros will be the reason why I give it a 1 out of 5 when it comes to displays. The Hydros does not have a display. I do find that that's something they need to create or have in the future. Not many people want to buy an iPad or a tablet and mount it to the side of their tank. Some people just want to use their phone. So on Apex display, it's kind of difficult to get around it. It's kind of slow. I wouldn't use it to set up anything by any means, but it would be nice if they updated their display. So I think a 4 out of 5 is a good score for the Apex and their display. So the next subject is going to be alarms. And what I mean by alarms is how do you get alerted from both of the systems? Now for this one, I tried both of them. I tried to get alarms going, and they're both not the greatest at giving alarms. I would give the slight edge to Hydros in providing the alarms. So let me explain why I believe that they're both not that great at giving alarms. So the Hydros does not have a display, does not have anything external to provide any type of audible alarm on their device, whereas the Apex has the ability to do so with their display. The Hydros does have flashing lights and has the LEDs on their units, which provides the alarm, whereas the Apex does not have that. So there's kind of pros and cons to both of them. Where they lose a lot of points, I think, is the fact that when the Hydros provides you with their alerts, it doesn't give you any type of, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. And either does Neptune, and that's something I would like both of them to be able to do. And that's provide you with an alarm that says, okay, you're having an issue with this, and you're having an issue with this, not just this or just this. Now, of course, there's ways around that. You can make a virtual outlet on Neptune, you can make a special outlet on the Hydros to provide you with that information, but I think that should be something that they both do, and that is provide multiple alerts or alarms at once. With that being said, I'm going to give the Hydros a 3 out of 5. I'm going to give the Neptune a 3 out of 5 for their alarms and monitoring capabilities. Okay, so the next subject is wireless. And what I mean by wireless is the fact that you can control things wirelessly with their products. Now, this is interesting because the Hydros has a wireless power bar and they have a wireless outlet. And I would assume they're coming out with more wireless devices. Their modules can be controlled wirelessly together into one system, which is interesting. However, you still need a wire to make them all part of the same system, essentially, on the app. But you can control everything through the wireless, which is kind of nice. Now, the Neptune, on the other hand, doesn't really have anything wireless. However, they have the IoTA compatibility, which allows you to control a multitude of lights wirelessly. They also have the WXM, which controls Ecotech devices wirelessly. So they do have that as well. So because of that, I'm going to give the Hydros a 5 out of 5 because they do have a lot more wireless capabilities. And I'm going to give the Neptune a 3 out of 5 because there is some, but not to the point that the Hydros has. Okay, so our next subject is going to be durability. Now this one's tough because the Hydros hasn't been out longer than a year to really rate it on durability. However, the Neptune's been around for 20 years, so rating durability is hard considering I've only had the Hydros for a year and I've had the Apex for over 10 years. So in terms of durability, I'm going to keep this pretty simple and give them both the same score of 4 out of 5. The Hydros, while it has a possibility of being a very durable product, there really isn't anything out there to say that it's the most durable product out there to give it a 5 out of 5. Those screw-on terminals, I'm not sure how they do with water damage. I've had mine sitting next to water and I haven't really seen any issues with them, but I have seen some salt creep get on them and cause them to be more difficult to unscrew. Whereas with the Apex, they don't have anything that screws. So most of their products are very easy to disassemble if they were to get any type of salt spray on them. I've had Apex for well over 10 years and I've rarely had any issues with any of their products. I've had a couple issues with their auto feeder systems. I've had a couple issues with the Apex controller. But in terms of durability, because of those little issues I've had with Neptune over the years, that's why I give them a 4 out of 5. And Hydros, I'm going to give a 4 out of 5 just because of that salt creep. But again, this one's a really difficult one to grade because Hydros hasn't been out long enough to really get a true feeling for it. Okay, so the next one's a big one. A lot of debate online, a lot of videos about this, and that is cost. I feel that this subject is difficult to grade because it's based off of the individual, depending on what your system is going to do, depending on what your system is going to need. As a general rule of thumb, if you have the same system, if we were to put the same systems together, generally the Hydros is going to be more expensive than the Apex. However, that can also be flipped around if you have a very basic system. If you have a very basic system, then the Hydros is actually going to be cheaper than the Neptune. Now here's where I go with this. If you have a system where you need 8 outlets, right? You can get the little wireless power bars. They're 4 outlets for the Hydros. You get 2 of them, now you have 8, and that costs around $60. The Neptune, however, to get 8 outlets is going to be $250. However, they do provide some extra things on their units. But as you can see, depending on the system, it can cost less. Now, let's say you have an Apex system with multiple tanks. You can get away with a couple modules and you're done. Whereas with the Hydros, you're going to have to buy a bunch of controllers. Now, they have went down in price, but you're going to need power supplies for the controllers. You're going to need more probes for the controllers, and it can cost more money. So this is a really tough one to grade. I'm going to give them both a 4 out of 5. And the reason I'm going to give them both a 4 out of 5 is I think the Hydros can be expensive, and I also think that the Neptune can be expensive. I don't think that they're overly expensive because you can get away with a nice Apex system for $500, and you can get a really nice Hydro system for $500. So I think $500 for a controller on a gigantic aquarium is reasonably priced. That's why I give it a 4 out of 5. I think, again, this is a tricky one to talk about because there's going to be 2 sides of this coin no matter what I say. I think both of them are equally valuable in their own ways, and both of them can be more expensive in their own ways. It's really difficult to gauge when you go online and you see Hydros, you see their controllers, $200, and you go and look at Apex and it's $500. But you have to look at it from what are you getting. You're getting a lot more with the Apex than you're getting with the Hydros for that amount of money. And again, it's all depending on your system. If you have a large system, Apex I think is going to be a better solution and a cheaper option. If you have a smaller system, I think Hydros is going to be your better option. So that's why I give them both a 4 out of 5, and I don't think one's better than the other. My next subject is cost to own. Very different than the upfront cost. And what I mean by cost to own is I mean how much does it actually cost to run these 2 devices over a period of time. So, with that being said, this is an interesting one. I would have to say that the Hydros is a lot cheaper over time than the Apex, and I'll explain why I came up with that conclusion. If you have a Trident on your Apex, you're going to have to refill reagent, let's say. With the Hydros, there is no Trident, so you're not going to be refilling reagents. In terms of the probes, you're just going to be replacing probes. Whereas with the Apex, let's say you need a new salinity probe, those guys are $130 a piece, right? So it can get really expensive as you have to replace things on your system with the Apex. Whereas with the Hydros, as you have to replace things, most of their, let's just say, consumable items are quite inexpensive. So with that being said, I am going to give the Hydros a 5 out of 5 for its cost to own. I don't really think there is much of a cost after the fact other than probes. Whereas I'm going to give the Apex or Neptune a 3 out of 5. And I think because of that reason is there's a number of consumables that you might have to replace over time. Optical sensors might go bad. I haven't heard of many optical sensors going bad on the Hydros side, whereas with Neptune I have heard optical sensors going bad, including my own. So there is a difference in cost to own, absolutely, on both systems. Okay, so the final subject's customer service. Now, when I look at customer service, I look at how quickly do they get back to you and what do they do when they get back to you. When I've contacted Coralvue in the past, it's always been difficult to get a hold of them for customer service. Sometimes you put in a ticket and sometimes you get help, sometimes you don't. I have found that they are difficult with their customer service. Thankfully, I haven't had much issues with my Hydros, but Coralvue as a company, I have had issues with their customer service in the past. With that being said, I'm going to give them a 3 out of 5 for their customer service. Again, I've had some bad experiences with them in the past. It's been difficult to get a hold of them at times, so I'm not sure what to say about their customer service other than, I hope they improve on it. And if they have, then that's great. Like I said, my experience hasn't been as great. On the flip side, Apex, I'm going to give them a 4 out of 5. I'm not going to give them a 5 out of 5. There has been times where it has been difficult to get a hold of Neptune. They have gotten better over the years. It's possible because I'm a YouTube guy that they're giving me a little more attention, which is great. But for some people, I'm told that it is more difficult to get a hold of them. I know that sometimes when you call Neptune to get support, you have to wait a couple days to get something scheduled to get support from them. They've usually been really good about warranties and replacing products under warranties, so for that, that's great. Again, I'm going to give them a 4 out of 5, which is a great score, but I'm not going to give them a perfect score because, like I said, there are a couple things that I think they can work on, but overall, I think they've been very good with customer service. Overall, I think I went through most of the key points of both of the systems. I can tell you I like both the systems a lot. I've worked with both of the systems. I've programmed both of the systems. I've installed both of the systems. I've had a good year with the Hydros to really get used to it. So it's interesting that the scores came to what they came to. So out of 75 points, the Hydros got a 58 out of 75, which is a really great score for the Hydros. And the Apex, or the Neptune, got a 59 out of 75. So it's very interesting. They got basically almost the same score. Neptune edged it out just by a hair. Like I said, I think both systems are really good. I think you'll be happy with both systems. Based on my scores, maybe that'll help you out decide between the two. Well, anyway, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, make sure you hit the thumbs up below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I got a lot of stuff coming. We got some live streams, free giveaways, the works. Hopefully, you guys make a good decision based on what I said. And if you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.